do just want to say before we get any further into the video, this video was filmed prior to Shadow of the Erdtree being released, so there's no spoilers here, and if there are some topics from Shadow of the Erdtree that are contradictory to what's in this video, I really am sorry. I'm absolutely bloody loving Shadow of the Erdtree, it's better than I could ever have imagined, so I hope you all are as well. I absolutely love horror. There's not many things inside of media that I like more than From Software's games, but if there was going to be anything that would surpass that love for From Software's games, it would be horror. When I say horror, I don't mean the type where they simply use jump scares as a quick jump, a jolt, and then you're like, oh shit, that wasn't very nice, and you just go on about your day, completely forgetting you even watched it because the only memorable part of that film was a cheap jump scare that you instantly forgot once that jump scare was over. To me, the perfect type of horror is one that makes you think and is genuinely scary, not because it's just jumping at you, but because the themes are genuinely scary. And I think Elden Ring is a great example of that. Now, there's multiple great horror games out there, for example the Resident Evil series, at least some of them. But I think Elden Ring normally gets bracketed in with Bloodborne's category, which is cosmic horror. But I actually do believe that Elden Ring is more of a genuine classical horror than most people seem to think. And in today's video, we're going to be going into exactly that. So please, sit back, relax, grab some succulent, tender, sensational prawns if you want, and enjoy as we delve into the horrors of Elden Ring. If you've played Elden Ring, you've most likely seen the loathsome shit eater. He is, after all, on the opening cutscene. But something that is semi-overlooked is the fact that this guy is quite literally out of a horror film. He goes around killing and slaughtering indiscriminately. Doesn't matter who they are, because he simply doesn't give a shit. He thinks he's doing the right thing, and that is honestly the scariest part. He goes around planting these curse marks upon his victims, and when they're reborn from the Erdtree, they curse their children and their children forever true. The shit eater honestly deserves to be in some kind of slasher flick because that's what his whole story is. He's basically going around hunting these people. The loathsome shit eater is basically Michael Myers on steroids and one that talks. That is quite literally the only difference, is the fact he's dressed a little weirder and he talks. It is straight out of a horror film. Not to mention the defiled areas that he leaves behind. Blood, corpse. It is disgusting and it's something straight out of a horror film. This is all without mentioning that he quite literally hunts down Bogart and kills him and leaves the corpse for us to find. Another thing that plays into this amazing horror storytelling is something that horror does quite often, and that is try and humanise the character. Now, if you actually look at the loathsome shit eater, we can see some kind of sun medallion on his chest. Now, it's unknown what exactly this is, but it reminds me of the kind of symbolism we see from the Golden Order. So if this guy wants to do everything he can to put the pox of death upon people and shun them from the Erdtree, make it so Grace will never choose them, but he has some sort of Golden Order insignia, it makes me think, well, maybe he was originally part of that, but what made him not want to be part of it? Well, we don't know, but he's obviously got some kind of disdain for that order, so maybe something happened to him from this order. We know the Golden Order isn't against being absolute dickheads, so that sort of adds a possible sympathetic layer to this horrible character, which takes an absolute shit ton of skill. As we the Tarnished walk through the Volcano Manor and we talk to Tanith, it's already pretty dark, veiled in mystery and intrigue, but as we further delve into the Volcano Manor, we come across something that is truly horrifying. As we enter in a dark room, we see these Albinaurics, a false life race that is being tortured within the Volcano Manor. To what ends Rykard and his people torture these Albinaurics, we do not know, but the way that they do torture them is horrifying. There is multiple medieval-esque contraptions they are locked in, unable to have full control of their body. Now, some of them are even strung up to wires on the ceiling which can go flying at you. It's sick and twisted. Not to mention there are some albinorics whose pain was accentuated even more. The Volcano Manor placed these masks upon some of them that accentuated their fear, made them feel all manner of pain. These are the Black Dumplings. This is a really horrifying and disturbing place. Not to mention this level quite literally feels like something out of a horror game. There are multiple times where enemies will jump at you out of the dark. It's honestly quite scary if you get jump scared. It's not like, oh, shiver me timbers, but it is very horror-y in its design, and I think that's intentional on From Software's behalf. Adding on to all of this, there's little secret passageways within the Volcano Manor which hold all manner of secrets with tortured souls lingering in their halls. I think altogether Volcano Manor is the perfect horror level, at least in my opinion. For the next one, I was a bit hesitant to bring it into the list because I didn't know how some people would think it related to horror. But I think on a psychological horror level, this character definitely deserves to be here. And that character would be Miquella the Unalloyed. Now Miquella is said to have manipulated those around him. A lot of item descriptions talk about how, oh, Miquella's so great, and yet we learn that Miquella has learned to compel this affection. This is told to us in the Bewitching branch item description, which coincidentally also can manipulate those around us to our side to fight against even their own kin. Such is the quote-unquote love. There's also the fact that there's evidence that he used this compelling affection to manipulate his own brother Mohg. In the Shadow of the Erdtree description, it tells us that Miquella divested himself of his strength, his flesh, his lineage, and of all things golden. If Miquella divested himself, then that must mean that Mohg didn't kidnap him, that Miquella went willingly. So that sort of implies that Mohg was manipulated. And when you see his frantic and manic actions towards Miquella, it makes a lot more sense, this manic love that Miquella has instilled in him. It's not necessarily your traditional horror, but I do think it does play into that. I think there's something truly terrifying and scary about your will being taken from you and being forced to do things you don't want to. It's not your typical horror film. It's not like your Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers is going to come out and slash your throat into two pieces. But it is horror, in my opinion. If someone did a horror film on this similar premise, I genuinely think it'd probably go over really well. Again, talking about more psychological horror, I genuinely think Godwyn also deserves to be on this list. Godwyn was killed by his own sister, his soul having been absolutely annihilated, his body only remaining. And his pain, which I interpret, spreads across the lands between through its roots. Now, why this is so scary is the fact that this guy was originally just a normal ass guy, albeit a demigod, before being transformed into this hideous abomination. Now, you could class this more as cosmic horror, but I also think it has its rightful spot within horror itself. Something that you might have noticed I'd said was that this spreading of the death root across the lands between might be his pain. Now, surely you might be going, well, if he's soulless he can't have any pain, but Fia tells us she has communicated with the Death Prince that this is his willing action. If he's willing to do something, that means he has a mind, he has a conscience, he's not fully gone. So if that is the case, who's to say that these sproutings of deathroot all throughout the lands between aren't his pain? Of course there's no concrete evidence that this is his pain, but I definitely don't think for 100% certainty that Godwyn is fully gone. And to me that's far more scary, because Godwyn is in this abomination form, he's motionless, we never see him move once. It is a miserable existence, and it really is something you'd expect to see in a really niche horror film. This is all without mentioning he quite literally spawns zombies. Those that live in death are basically zombies, but there's no other way to put it, which I know zombies aren't really classed as more horror-y elements anymore because it sort of doesn't really play into that always, but there are a lot of good horror zombie films like Train to Busan, so I did just want to mention that sort of zombie-esque element to this storyline. Now if we talk about it as a whole, Elden Ring story is just straight up disturbing. There's all the things we've talked about today, but then you've also got things like the Golden Order, which just slaughters and kills indiscriminately, torturing those around it. The omens, which are locked away underground, their children being slaughtered. Children, might I add. Children being slaughtered by omen hunters. Then there's the nomadic merchants, which are locked underground for a crime they didn't commit. Women, children and men, all condemned to a fate worse than death, locked with the frenzied flame. There is no doubt in my mind that From Software have created a secret horror masterpiece. This is just my opinion. You're completely entitled to think differently, but I implore you to think about what we've talked about today and come to your own conclusions on whether Elden Ring is a secret horror game or not. I'm really curious to see what you all have to say. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. We are honestly so close to 5,000 subscribers. It's honestly been such a wild ride. I've been doing YouTube for about 7 years now, since 2016. Oh, well, 8 years now then. So it's been a really long ride and I can't believe where we are today. I'm not going to hold you any longer, as it's already been going 11 minutes. I really do hope you have a great rest of your day. Please, don't you dare go hollow, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.